Nice. We're back, Jacob. Again, very unexpected. The Bears coming back in for a with a trade here, but I'm digging it.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of this for sure. I think that I wasn't expecting the Bears to trade up to the full extent that they did. I could have figured with the additional draft capital that they have in 2025 that maybe they'd make a move in round 6, round 7 if they like a guy. But I think that this was a very aggressive trade, and I mean that in a good way. Being able to deal a future fourth for this guy, and I had a 4th round grade on him, so and I know many other people had higher grades on him. We'll get into the analysis in a little bit, but I think that this was I'm definitely a fan of this trade. I'm a fan of this pick from a value perspective, an upside perspective, and a need perspective. Nice. It really checks all the boxes.
All right, I am all shared to my socials. Everything is kicking everywhere it needs to be. So let's record a podcast.
Awesome. Shoot. I didn't realize that we weren't recording the pod right away. So
we were recording. This is on for the video exclusive. I'm going to cut it out when it goes to the podcast channel, but
love it. Yeah,
there's a ton of guys already in the stream here, so they got the early access from Jacob Infante. So let's get this rocking here.
Love it.
What is happening, Chicago Bears fans? This is T-Formation Conversation. I'm Lester Wiltfong, editor-in-chief, Windy City Gridiron. I, of course, have our guy back in with us, our lead draft analyst, Jacob Infante. I wasn't expecting to talk to you today, Jacob, because the Bears were done. You just did the podcast with Taylor Dahl about Torrey Taylor, but here we are. The Bears trade back in to the draft, sending a future 4th to get in the 5th round for Kansas defensive end Austin Booker. What are your initial thoughts on the player?
So as a player, I know Daniel Jeremiah said this on the NFL Network broadcast, and I'm in a full agreement where if Booker stayed in college for another year, he might be an early round pick in 2025.
I heard that,
I'd argue a top 50 pick with the tools that he has. You're looking at a 1 year. I don't want to say 1 year wonder because that implies that he's never going to do anything else afterwards. But in his 3 seasons in college, only one had, production. He was a backup at Minnesota, redshirted 1 year, and then was a backup for the other year. Then he transferred to Kansas, had 8 sacks, had 12 tackles for a loss, and he dominated. He was a first team All Big 12 defensive newcomer of the year. The tape was really impressive, especially for someone as inexperienced as Booker is. Definitely a project. I feel like, his instincts can improve a little bit, and, the center of gravity can get a little bit better. But, and his processing, I feel like, isn't amazing. But I think the play strength is there, the athleticism is there, the length is there, the high motor's there. And even if the processing isn't all the way there yet, the hand activity definitely is. He's got a decent amount of moves he can use to win at the point of attack. He uses push-pull moves quite well. I think, his swim move's pretty good. He's got a good long arm, obviously, with how long and lanky he is. And for a guy, a little bit lighter for an edge rusher at 240 pounds, I think he can convert speed to power pretty well. So, I think that the tools are definitely there with him. I feel like this is a great opportunity for a guy who's only 21. He's not going to turn 22 until December. It's a great opportunity to develop him a little bit, give him some time to slowly work into the NFL game. And, he'll probably rotate in some capacity with DeMarcus Walker, Dominique Robinson. If there's somebody else that they bring in free agency or a trade or something, I'd be all for that. But I think Booker could be a long-term answer at edge rusher. Obviously, that's a pretty bold thing to say about a 5th round pick, and I don't think you're going to see that right away. But I do think the potential's there for him to really step into his own and carve out a role for himself on this Bears defense.
Well, there's been Bears fans calling for this pick, for a while. I think even
Yeah,
some in the third round, they were saying, no, this guy would be fine to take there. So,
yeah,
you talk about a lot of tools for the guy, a lot of different pass rush moves, a big variance in what he can do. And when you talk about his experience, like I said, he doesn't have a lot of experience. He's a redshirt sophomore. So there's not a lot of snaps right now in major college football. So he'll have to learn a little more for the NFL game. You talk about his process, and I think what you're talking about that is how he doesn't know how to read and react what's happening in front of him. He may have a lot of good moves. He's not putting them all together as quick as possible. I did a mock draft a couple weeks ago, an NFC North mock draft, and I ended up taking Booker in the fourth round of my pick. So you know me, I'm not diving into tape like you. So, but he was in my draft. I knew a little bit about him. I did go back and watch some of his film, and like you said, he has nice variants of moves. And if he could put this together, with now going to the Bears, he's not going to be expected to start from day one. Obviously, I don't want to use the term project because this is a guy that most scouts had like a much higher grade on, including yourself. I've seen him comped as far as his play style to Max Crosby, which I think is kind of unfair because Max Crosby is one of the best in the game. But as a guy, the Bears can kind of bring along slowly, put him in like a Mark Anderson role to kind of call back a name from Bears yesteryear. Just he's in there to rush the passer. That's his job. Get after the quarterback, explosive first step, see what happens. I like this pick.
No, absolutely. And, I agree. I think, I love the Mark Anderson shout, first of all, but I think, I do think that kind of rotational role will be a great opportunity for Booker. I want to see him get a little bit bigger, especially in the anchor. I feel like you might struggle a little bit more at the NFL level with setting the edge, holding up blocks at the point of attack. But he's got, pretty good hand usage in the run game. And I feel like the run game allows him to, to read and then react a little bit more. Whereas pass rushing, it's maybe a little bit quicker for when he has to figure out which moves to use. And, he was one of the better, at least from an efficiency perspective, from a stats perspective, he was one of the better run defending edge rushers in this class. And I'm frantically looking to pull up the Austin Booker stats, but yeah, he had a run stop rate of 10.2%. And that's, I don't have the exact percentile, but that's judging by this chart that I'm looking at, that seems to be, over 90th percentile for edge rushers. And that's, obviously very high. So Booker's someone that, some people flew out there as a third round pick. Like you said, I wasn't quite on board with that. I had him as a fourth rounder. I had him in the 120s somewhere. So to get him where the Bears ended up getting him in
good
the
value there.
Yeah. In the 150s. I mean, that's very good value. That's almost an entire round ahead of where I had him projected. So, definitely a fan of that. And like I said, the future draft capital, the aspect that the Bears have where they've got 2 second-round picks, could have 2 third-round picks if Ian Cunningham gets hired elsewhere as GM. You have a little bit of flexibility to work with. And if you're really going to miss that 4th-round pick, then, yeah, sure, you can trade up a little bit. You can make your way back or trade down, I should say.
Yeah.
You can, probably acquire a 4th-round pick by moving down with one of those second-rounders. Or, maybe even like the first third rounder that you have, something like that.
Plus that Justin Fields trade could end up being a 4th round pick, depending on how
exactly
it plays. So, yeah, there's some ways here that Ryan Poles kind of make the pick up. And let's talk about that trade real quick. It was a future 4th to get into 5th, which is that's common. That's kind of what teams do whenever you're going to trade back into a draft. You generally trade a round higher in the future. So as far as the value goes, this probably is a wash.
Yeah.
But Ryan Poles saw a guy he wanted. He talked about it yesterday in his press conference, how there were some gold level players he saw still on his board. And he discussed the possibility of using some future capital to kind of trade back in. And when he picked the punter, most of us thinking, okay, that's probably it. If there was a guy he wanted, he probably would have got him sooner.
Yeah.
But he jumped back in. He saw a guy there that was high on his board. He understood the value of the pick. He has, now he has 8 picks next year, but like I said, he can recoup those picks. It can happen. We're not talking about a premium pick that he used. So this is like a win-win right here for the Bears.
Absolutely. I think, and it's worth mentioning that the fifth round pick the Bears did trade for was originally theirs. They dealt it to Buffalo for Ryan Bates. So Buffalo gave the pick back to Chicago for a future fourth. So
Oh, this was the same pick.
it was the same pick. Yeah.
I saw it was pick 9. I'm like, 9. It sounds like it might have been something in the
It
Bears
might be
range.
Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah. So I feel like you could look at it from, okay, maybe Ryan Bates was a little bit of an overpay, at least in my opinion. You could argue otherwise, but I think this trade and this whole process becomes a lot more palatable when you think of it as the Bears got Austin Booker and Ryan Bates for a fourth round pick.
Essentially, yeah.
And, essentially, if you're looking at, the Bears are expected to be, if not a playoff team, at the very least in contention there. So that's a mid to late fourth round pick. I think that's pretty good value because that's originally where, that's, a lot of people thought Austin Booker was going to go higher than that. So, and I'm assuming that if the Bears are willing to trade up and make such an aggressive move, giving up a future fourth, I assume that the Bears had a higher grade on him than that too. So not only are you getting a toolsy edge rusher who might be better than, what you might be able to get next year in the fourth round anyway, but you're also getting, on top of that, essentially, you're still getting Ryan Bates out of it. So if he's not starting at center, that's still a very, that's a valuable swing interior offensive lineman. So I'm happy with the trade. Honestly, I think that there's definitely a lot to like with Booker in terms of his long-term projection. Again, he's raw. I don't want to come out here and be like, oh, he's going to get like 10 sacks right out of the gate. I think that's unrealistic, but I do think that he's someone where if you develop him a little bit, you're patient with his progress, you slowly but surely involve him a little bit more in the defense. I think he's someone who could eventually step into that long-term starting role alongside Montez Sweat.
Yeah, I mean, you keep mentioning the tools. I mean, that's something that really stands out when you watch him. Like you said, there's a lot of players at his stage in his development. Like I said, a redshirt sophomore, that they have a speed, they have a dip under, they have a swim. They can't put it all together because they don't have a wide variety of moves. But here's a guy that is inexperienced, but he has a nice set of tools already. He's a good athlete. Eric Washington, the Bears' new D coordinator, he made his name developing defensive linemen. That's kind of what he does. So I'm sure he is excited with this pick. Like you said, he's a guy that is, even though he's 240, he's been pretty good against the run. I know there's a clip making rounds on Twitter that was shared, I think, by a Packers beat guy, where they're showing Booker just pantsing the Packers. Was it Jordan Morgan?
Jordan Morgan,
yeah. So I mean, the guy shared it as a clip to kind of show how Morgan may want to go inside the guard.
Yeah,
but for Bears fans, we're like, that's our guy beating the Packers guy's ass. That's a nice. But in that pick, he has a good long arm. He has good speed to power, which you said, and like I said, at 240, you don't expect the kind of power.
Yeah,
but it shows up. So he has good tools. He has good speed to power, good athleticism. He's just inexperienced. And I think when the Bears put it all together, again, you don't want to project a future starter at a guy in the 5th round, but this guy seems like he is that right now.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. And I don't want to say right out of the gate, oh, he's going to be a future starter. He's going to be a high-end starter at the next level, because you never really know. And for a 5th round pick, that's obviously a lot to project. But obviously, you mentioned the tools, you mentioned the length, you mentioned the get off speed, you mentioned the, some of the promise he has in terms of how he uses his hands, the better than expected strength for someone who's 240 pounds. There's something to work with there.
Yeah,
it definitely is. And obviously there's still work that needs to be done, but I feel like if you can gain even just like 10 pounds and still maintain the level of quickness, he ran like a 4.7, I think, at the combine. I was expecting in the 4.6s just based off of his tape. So maybe he's just not. He's still a good tester. Like his relative athletic score was over 7, which would make him in the 70th percentile for athletes at the edge rusher position. But I do think that, with what he brings to the table, the flashes he's shown on tape, definitely worth investing a 5th round pick in. So time will tell exactly if he lives up to his potential. I think there's a chance that he definitely outdoes his draft slotting.
Yeah,
I think that's definitely in the cards, but Again, as far as the future, you can only just imagine. You can project as much as you want, and it remains to be seen. But I feel like there's definitely an opportunity for him to be much more than what he is right now.
Well, he definitely has a place on the roster because,
Oh
like
yeah.
you said, the Bears had a need for edge. You
Mhm.
know, if they bring him along slowly, you're talking Sweat, you're talking Walker. You know, he'll have a chance to rush the passer in Chicago,
Yeah.
and you know they're not going to be forced to kind of play him, which we kind of saw. If they would have took an edge earlier, it would have kind of been forced to play him because of draft status. But where
Absolutely.
they're getting him here, they can let him ease in, and like you said, his testing numbers were good. They weren't great. But
Yeah.
a lot of it is also you know, his play speed is different than what his testing number was. I mean, he looks like the part of a guy that should have been drafted higher. I'm excited. I'm excited about the entire Bears draft. I know when I talked to you on after the first night, Caleb, Rome were like, "Hey man, that's it. Whatever else they get is gravy." It's been some pretty damn good gravy here. You know,
Oh yeah.
it's pretty good. I like what they've done here. They could be done. They may not be. If they do jump back in, I'm guessing it'll be me and you again for one more pod if it happens. But if not, Jacob, appreciate all the help this year for draft coverage.
Of
We got
course.
some more stuff coming down the pipe. We're going to have you on Monday at 6 o'clock Central. Me and JB are going to have a Bear and Balance with you, recapping the entire draft. So you guys make sure you stop by the YouTube channel. We're going to do that live again. Bring your questions. Jacob will have all the answers at that time. But Jacob, let's get out of here and let's finish watching the rest of this draft.
Let's do it. I'm excited for the rest of the draft just because I like to play the game of who's going to be the first prospect that I haven't watched a lick of tape on.
How many guys have you scouted this year?
441. Yeah. And the last guy I watched, because my draft guide I advertised 440, but I watched one more guy after that, and that was Giovanni Manu, the offensive lineman from British Columbia, because I knew one, I was going to be interviewing him, and two, I knew that there's a little bit of talk about him. So, and he ended up
drafted
going.
Yet? Yeah, he went right.
Yeah, he got round 4 to the Lions, which that's I'm pissed at the Lions for that because they already have such a good offensive line. If there's any team that could afford to trade up for a guy like that with that, who's raw but has those elite tools, I mean, that team's got to be Detroit. So we're I think we're at 168 at the time of recording, and I'm still 168 for 168, but I've never had every single player before. So that's on my bucket list. So we'll, fingers crossed.
This will be the year 441 in. So
I hope so. We'll see.
Quick shout out to Brenda. Thanks for letting everyone know to like the video as well. That helps with the YouTube algorithm. So I appreciate it, Brenda. All you guys in the chat, appreciate it. I'll cut this up in a podcast soon. But Jacob, until next time, bear down, my friends.